Good evening. One of America's most closely watched Senate races come November will be Democrat John Hickenlooper versus Republican Senator Cory Gardner. Former Governor Hickenlooper is currently trouncing his progressive challenger for the Democratic Senate nomination, former State House Speaker Andrew Romanoff. With more than 50% of the expected vote tallied, Hickenlooper holds a commanding 60 to 40% lead over Romanoff right now. An upset is brewing in the Republican primary for the U.S. House seat to represent the Western Slope, Pueblo, and Southern Colorado. Republican Congressman Scott Tipton trails a long-shot challenger Lauren Boebert by 12 points in that race currently, 56 to 44%. Boebert is best known as the owner of a restaurant in Rifle where the waitstaff open carries. It's called Shooters. She doesn't have a lot of differences of opinion that she's been able to articulate with the congressman, but said that she wanted to go to Congress in order to tangle with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the well-known Democrat from New York. There are two Democrats in a primary for that congressional district, CD3, looking to face off against Boebert or Tipton. And currently, Dianne Mitz-Bush, who was the Democratic nominee 2 years ago and lost to Scott Tipton, is leading James Iacino 62 to 38%. Closely watching one Republican House primary for the Colorado State House. This is House District 22 in southern Jefferson County, in which incumbent Representative Colin Larson currently has a double-digit lead over his challenger Justin Everett, who, for what it's worth, used to hold that seat himself. Want to bring in the 9 News political analysts right now, Democrat James Mejia and Republican Kelly Maher, to take a closer look at some of what we are seeing tonight. And I'm curious, James, first to you, the fact that John Hickenlooper looks like he's going to run away with it tonight. What does that tell you about, one, the state of the Democratic populace in Colorado, plus unaffiliated voters, and then two, how that shapes up for November?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. The results are predictable and predicted. However, Hickenlooper is having some trouble controlling his own narrative in terms of closing this nomination. Hindered by the ethics violations as well as many missteps in communities of color. That's going to play a big role in November. As Kelly and I were talking earlier, it seems like the Republican playbook and their advertisements have written themselves.
Kelly, let me ask you this. Years ago, in a Politico profile by the fantastic Eli Stokols, who used to work across the street for our competitor at Fox 31, there was a Hickenlooper advisor, unnamed, who described watching him stumble through his political life like a baby crossing a highway. And I guess my question to you is, we've seen a bit of that in the last couple of weeks from Hickenlooper, but how wide is the highway? Is he likely to make it through November safely in a race that is trending towards Democrats, or do Republicans really have a chance of widening the highway, so to speak?
Well, I think the real question here is, at what point does the shine come off of this narrative that John Hickenlooper has been able to capitalize on for years, that he's the outsider and that he's just a geologist? He's a 2-term governor. He ran for president. And at some point, the fact that he continuously not just puts his foot in his mouth, but has this ever growing avalanche of things coming down the mountain at him, it feels like he's about to get run over by the proverbial snowball of disaster.
So, James, let me ask you this. How much of what has been thrown against Hickenlooper in the waning days of the Democratic primary is really going to matter to a general election populace? Outside of the fact that he was held in contempt by the State Ethics Commission, first person ever held in contempt for refusing to testify. They found he broke the law twice while he was in office. I can see that playing well in a general election in terms of a critique, but a lot of the stuff he's been criticized for was really more about trying to separate off progressives. It's not like progressives are going to go to Cory Gardner at the end of the day.
That is true. They may not go to Cory Gardner at the end of the day, but they may not go to Hickenlooper either. They may be unenthusiastic and stay home. Here's the problem. The ethics violations are going to hurt him from the right, and the missteps, let's call them, perhaps better stated, holding him accountable for the things he says in communities of color and about communities of color. He's being held accountable by the left in that regard. So he's actually going to have problems from the right and the left for different reasons.
Kelly, let me ask you, as we look to the Western Slope and the real possibility that Congressman Scott Tipton could lose his seat in Congress in a Republican primary to Lauren Boebert, the restaurant owner from Rifle. Folks who are not familiar with Ms. Boebert, she was not able to tell me many issues that she disagreed with Scott Tipton on. Nor was she willing to tell me whether or not she would accept foreign interference to help her win an election, but she really wanted to go and argue with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Congress. So my question is, sorry, took a long time to get there. My question is, if she's the Republican nominee, is that district competitive for Democrats?
Well, I mean, look, that district has always been somewhat competitive. I think that when you have an untested candidate, it always becomes somewhat of a horse race. But I'm frankly very surprised, and I don't know anybody who really thought that this outcome was possible. But it speaks to the fact that people are really looking for something different, and people are very frustrated with the status quo. I'm surprised because President Trump endorsed pretty loudly Scott Tipton. So I'm surprised that Republicans have gone against that thus far, from what we can tell. But that district has always been somewhat competitive.
Yeah, James, let me bring you in on that as well. Scott Tipton, the incumbent Republican congressman, doesn't have a lot of disagreements with President Trump. As soon as Lauren Boebert challenged him in the GOP primary, President Trump very quickly endorsed Scott Tipton. Within the last couple of days, reiterated that endorsement of Scott Tipton, despite the fact that Lauren Boebert was out saying that she would be the more pro-Trump candidate. Understand that district is one that has been represented by both Republicans and Democrats in the last couple of cycles. John Salazar there, and then you had Scott Tipton. Dianne Mitz-Bush lost to Scott Tipton in 2018, 51 and change to 43 in change. If she is the nominee again, does the fact that she's running this race for the second time in 2 years significantly help her?
I think it does. I think she'd rather not run against an incumbent this time around. I think she'd rather run against someone who is untested and frankly has said some pretty interesting things so far on the campaign trail. Boebert may have a difficult time staying on message. She may have a difficult time bringing in independents, which are growing in that district. So I think Bush has a good chance. It looks like she's headed towards the nomination. I think Bush has got a good chance. She's tested. She's run a tough campaign before, and I think she's got a good shot at taking this one on.
All right, James Mejia, Kelly Maher, thank you both for your perspective. We are going to step away for just a quick moment because we expect in short order we will hear from Andrew Romanoff and John Hickenlooper in the most high-profile race of the night, in which the former governor, John Hickenlooper, appears to have handily defeated Andrew Romanoff, the former Speaker of the House, the progressive, in the race for the right to take on Republican Senator Cory Gardner in November. Our primary night coverage continues across the networks of 9 News in just a bit.